Right, so a few facts and figures about the University of Exeter. We've got 3 sites. There's 2 in Exeter and 1 shared site at Penryn in Cornwall, which we share with the University of Falmouth. We've got just shy of 30,000 students. It probably is, that's last year's figures, so it probably is 30,000 now. About 23% are international, 91% of them are in Exeter, and 9% in Penryn. So we've actually got quite small numbers in Penryn. And we have, most of them are our Streatham campus, about 22,000 there. And we have 2,700 odd academics. So I've put details of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences on there, because that is the faculty that we worked with most closely on this project. Sorry, I shall grab some water. I will probably be referring to colleges and faculties throughout this because they changed. We had a bit of an academic restructure halfway through this. So those are the sort of main subjects that we focused on. So our original strategy goes right back to 2016-17. We had an original strategy which was part of the university's research strategy, and our part of it was called the 21st Century Research Library Project. That was a 5-year project conceived out of that institutional research strategy. It was assigned a budget of roughly 1.5 million, and that budget was split across the 5 years. And there were 3 main strands to that. So there's exposing our own archives. We had many in store that were unlisted. We had no capacity to list them, catalogue them, describe them. So some budget was put towards those archives and to getting some posts in to start working on those neglected collections. Another strand was access to other archives. So that was creating links with other local record offices and archives, especially in places like Somerset, for example, where there's no university, and Dorset, where we already had really strong personal research links. And the third strand was broadening access to other digital archives, which is where I come in. So this is where AM and also the other digital publishers come in too. So part of that was setting up originally an advisory board. So we had representation from the different colleges and subject areas at the time, humanities, social sciences, but also human geography, business, plus me and the head of special collections to lead on specific strands of that. We did a large scoping and prioritising exercise, which meant contacting every library liaison officer, which was at the time the academic reps in the departments for each subject area, every director of education in those subject areas, and also heads of relevant research centres to ask for suggestions that would enhance research outputs and therefore, we hoped, ref results. Also, we wanted them to say how these resources that they wanted would improve potential for research bids. We also wanted them to say how they might help recruit PGR students, and also remove the need for researchers to travel. So we asked them all to make cases around those different areas. So it was more than just, I'd like this, please, because it suits me. We needed a really robust case for everything. Some departments, mainly history, had to prioritise as the requests were way above the budget available. So they did this based on relevance to multiple members of staff and research centres, but also supporting rising research stars in the department. So we've got a lot of African history resources at the time. As I was saying to Matt earlier, we had a rising research star in African history. So we focused in on her and got a lot of resources to support her research. We also held some, on those other strands, we held some events to help link local archive staff to our staff. We linked up those staff with our interested researchers and our own special collections department, so a few events like that. We also employed some new archivists, and they were set to work to start sorting and describing and cataloguing some of our most important collections. And the priority on that was decided by the advisory board. So we did the scoping on an annual basis, so going back to the digital archives bit. We went back each year to our wish list. We reprioritised as new staff arrived, other staff left, research priorities changed, and we refreshed it every year. And we kept going back and saying, do you still want this? We couldn't get it last year. We might be able to get it this year. Is it still top priority? And we tried to ensure parity across subject areas. And we chased everyone to make sure that all subject areas were covered, because some people didn't reply, which is a bit strange when you say, I've got lots of money to spend. How would you like me to spend it? We did cover the broad humanities and social sciences, so every department that I've already mentioned, and plus human geography, business. We invited some medics along as well, because we had people working in that sort of area, but in the end there was nothing that they specifically wanted. But we did have some interesting feedback from the geographers and business academics, for example, which I'll come on to later. part of the scoping was actually looking for good deals to broaden our access in the most cost-efficient way. So at the end of 2018-19, so that was the third year of the project, we were able to look at the complete purchase of the AM resources. So that was essentially buying everything we didn't already have in one go. We hoped that would transform our access to content because AM offered collections that many other digital publishers didn't. The UK focus was particularly important to our researchers, as well as global colonial history. That was building at the time at the institution, and that linked to the UK specifically, and AM did this particularly well. Having this project enabled us to kind of leverage other funds around the university, so we were able to call on the library's content budget and also some budgets in humanities to enable that purchase. So it was good to have that strategic focus and to be able to bring in other sort of sources of investment to enable us to make really significant purchases. Nice fun picture of me and some colleagues. So we did some promotion once we made the large purchase from AM. We also promoted some other collections that we bought as well as digital collections that we'd made in the digital humanities department. That wasn't part of the project, but Gary on screen there is our head of digital humanities. You've got Chris Faunch in the middle, who was our head of special collections, and then me on the end. Chris Faunch has since retired. We've got a new head of special collections now. So this picture is us at the what we call the Digital Learning Playground event. So this was in the September following our big kind of complete AM purchase. So it's 2019. All the academics who were involved in education were invited to come along and see what was on offer across the university to help enhance their education practices. We were one of many stands in a big room, but we had some really great conversations with academics, making them aware of the possibilities and showing them how to access the archives, how to do cross-searching, and just have a think about how they could enhance their teaching by leveraging some of our great new resources. So at this point, the strategy was starting to change a bit. Although all of our overarching activity in purchasing was designated as part of the research strategy, there was an increasing awareness that we should be ensuring the offer was used to the max by educators as well. And we were looking more for relevance to students, starting to think about dissertations. Exeter's always prided itself on having research-led education, so you can't buy stuff for research and then have it not feed into education. So everything was starting to shift a bit at this point. While I'm still talking about promotion, we created a LibGuide to promote the AM collection and showcase all the resources. That's now gone because it's kind of become part of our sort of general offer. But what we do is promote all of the digital resources that we've got, or digital archives we've got, as part of our primary sources LibGuide. URLs on the screen. And that came out of the advisory board. Some of the academics were saying, you've got these great resources now, but how do I find stuff on Central Asia? How do I find stuff on travel? How do I find stuff on the Vietnam War, particularly, for example? So we started categorizing everything ourselves, and we've got everything on there by geographical location, time period, and theme. I have to say it is a bit like the Forth Bridge, because our work is never done, and we're constantly finding new ways to describe things, and as our history subject librarian particularly explores more of the collections, she keeps going, oh, well, that one's also this, and that's also this. The sort of geography and time period ones can get massive, so we kind of gravitate to the theme one and start there. Otherwise, the 19th century one would just be gigantic. So that's a really useful kind of first starting point to point new academics and all students to as well in terms of how to find stuff. There is a section on there, which you probably can't see, called Using Primary Sources Too, and that's become increasingly important. We point to the AM research skills source in there, and that's a way of teaching students how to get the most out of those archives. Okay. Success. Were we successable? I couldn't resist this one. This bit of marketing has been around since the later 80s, I gather. I've struggled to find a picture, but I found a picture of a window sticker, so there you go. So the first point I want to make is reputation. We have probably the best digital archive collections in Europe, I think. So we were definitely the first university in the UK and Europe to have access to all of the AM collections. And that was really important to be able to use, both in terms of recruitment of academic staff and PGR students in particular, also with university managers as well. They liked to be able to say that at meetings with other ranking heads of universities. So yeah, that was a useful little thing to be able to say. Well, quite a big thing actually. We also used it at open days, and library stands and open day fairs specifically promoted our digital archives. We had a number of years where we were talking about the library, but all the posters were the digital archives. And we said, look, come here, you get access to all of this. So yeah, next point, in terms of success, this was kind of unanticipated. Pandemic readiness. Our digital first policy for content acquisition really helped with this. We've been getting ebooks in preference over print since 2013. We'd also already done loads of online tutorials for teaching because we had quite a small liaison team. So we were already quite prepared for the pandemic. And then we had all these fantastic digital archives to go with it. So we felt actually quite well prepared. Very lucky, really. Dissertations for undergraduates were a particular worry when people couldn't travel. So we promoted our resources as a whole, and departments steered their students very firmly towards our digital collections during those pandemic years, and we got lots of good feedback about that. And researchers could also carry on their research relatively unhindered because we'd got so much. And cross-searchability has been brilliant, and to be honest, not something we originally thought about. That sort of serendipitous discovery of material in collections that you might not have thought about or directed people to has been really interesting. That took off after our large sort of complete impact purchase, and it remains a really important place to point students to save time in searching. So we will point students towards particular subject collections, but we'll also say, do check that complete cross-search, because you'll find stuff in a collection you would never have looked at, and that has been really, really helpful. Right, so these are some of the staff comments we had before we made that complete purchase. I won't read them all out, but essentially they were all saying, this is amazing, this looks fantastic, this is going to help me so much with my teaching or with my research. There's a business comment in there, the World Fairs one, which was really interesting. Business were really keen. They also supported or were asking for food and drink and history, leisure, travel and mass culture, business, economic and labour history, and American consumer culture. We've got a small but very active group of business historians, and they were really keen. And one I couldn't fit on the screen was about the First World War collection as well, which was just expanding our existing access to that. So it was really popular. So this is a selection of the messages I had supporting the purchase. Most of the emails afterwards are along the lines of, that's amazing. So that would have been a bit of a boring slide, but that was essentially the feeling. There is one there about the per-editor manuscripts saying, this is excellent news, I'm so thrilled to hear it. So that was the kind of the flavour of the stuff we were getting. Okay, so that's up to that point. So changing strategy. So the original project was a 5-year project. So when that ended, what next? So the scope had already widened a bit to include education as well as research. We thought it really important to keep building on what we'd achieved through the 21st Century Research Library project. So what we did is earmark some of the library's own content budget going forward and morph the advisory committee into the new Digital Research Resources Advisory Committee, or DRAC. It's not the best name. I always think of it, sounds a bit like Dracula, but yeah, you'll probably make all sorts of analogies with that, which I won't go into, but that's what we came up with anyway. So the remit this time was just digital archives. The bits about special collections went to a separate board, and we felt that the work with the local archives was there, and those connections had been made. So we were just looking at digital archives from this point onwards. And the remit was to look to build on what we'd already achieved. So issues that we're sort of actively considering as part of the new remit, research still, that's still really important, but also widening dissertation choices for undergraduates and postgraduates. When we talk to history particularly, they want to give the widest possible choice to students about what they choose to study. So the more stuff we get, the more opportunity there is for them to really explore and do things and pursue their own passions. Cost of living concerns, that one's cropped up in the last few years, that they are not going away. Having a really good collection of digital archives really helps with that, because students don't have to travel anywhere to go and access anything. They can do their entire dissertation at a computer. So that it does help with that. I've got on their reading list policy as well. We've just agreed this summer a new addition to our reading list policy, which is that students should not have to purchase any of their core materials for teaching. So we're not asking students to buy any books at all. That's having different impacts in different subject areas. But it also means we've got some great digital archives. Teach with those. So yeah, it's about pointing people to what we've got and thinking about how they can do that to make sure that students don't have to purchase anything. And then yes, reducing and removing hidden course costs is another big one. I've already said you don't have to go anywhere to do your dissertation. We do have a travel bursary scheme, which we've been running for quite a long time now, but numbers have noticeably dwindled. We put aside about 5,000 for that every year, and that's been an ongoing project since a whole set of bad NSS results, actually, and it helped after that. But the numbers have dwindled since we made our big complete purchase with AM, actually, and we haven't spent more than half of that since that point. So that's been really interesting, seeing that the demand for students to actually travel to go places has gone down. I mean, it went down during the pandemic anyway, but it's not bounced back up to where it was before we made that big purchase. And then, yeah, what does it look like in practice now? So we do more scoping every year. We are looking for more opportunities to maximise access to content. There are always requests for things that we can't do or we can't get. If anyone could digitise the Sun newspaper, we would bite your hand off, but I gather that's going to be difficult. So yeah, and forward planning. We do lots of forward planning. Can we keep building? Are we going to be able to keep building on what we've got? What's it looking like? Which way are the kind of research and teaching interests going, and how are we going to look to expand that? And then, yeah, just looking forward a bit, we've got budgetary pressures. Every university has budgetary pressures this year. We've got quite extreme ones, all to do with international students. I'm sure you all know about this. But what we've done so far really helps, because the large-scale stuff is actually substantially in place. So it's about maintenance and development and building on what we've got rather than starting from a kind of lower starting point. And sustainability is a huge area of importance for Exeter. I've got a little kind of screenshot there of our, what do we call it, greener, healthier, fairer. Those are the kind of three words that are mentioned a lot to do, and they are Exeter's vision. So sustainability is a big part of that. We're leaders in climate change science. We strive to be greener in all we do. So obtaining access to more digital archives means that there's less need to travel for anyone, and that helps with the budget. So we are really looking to keep building on our progress wherever we can, and continuing to reduce costs wherever possible, especially researcher and student travel costs, and keep contributing to those three elements of our vision. So that's where we are. Any questions now on any of that?
So I have a question which I suppose is a broader one, which is exactly about the sustainability of digital resources. 'Cause we've had this discussion at Oxford about e-books versus physical books. The Bodleian's deposit library, but actually a lot of publishers now only provide electronic copies as legal deposit, which has been a problem because they were linked to the system of the British Library, which was hacked last year. And it revealed the fragility, I think, of a lot of the digital infrastructure that underpins this. I'm not sure this is specifically relevant necessarily to Adam Matthews' provision, but I think it's a wider question that subject librarians need to consider. I mean, another is, of course, digital formats and how long they last for, because in a sense we don't really know. You know, at one point everybody thought microfilm was the future of documentary preservation, and we don't think that anymore. How do we actually manage that process, particularly as certain elements of the digital revolution, such as AI, are actually very, very thirsty for electricity, for water, for other resources?
Yeah, I think that is a bit of an issue. That I did a tiny bit of research on that before I wrote the proposals for our reading list policy and the changes on that. And the jury's out in terms of what's the most sustainable in terms of print versus electronic, because there is a cost to creating print materials and storing them and all of that. It came down in favour of an ebook is better environmentally than every student buying their own copy of a print book. A print book on the shelf in the library compared to an ebook, nobody's quite sure what that looks like, because every study has been slightly different. So no one's got an answer really for that one yet. I think for us, there's also a big space strategy. We don't have a lot of space at Exeter. We've got growing numbers of students. We need to create more study space. So we don't want books on the shelves in quite the same way. We need to create that space. But we want to do that in the best way possible so we don't lose access to stuff. This is a whole separate conversation. So I think it's a bit of a balancing act, and then we could get into AI, which is even more controversial. So I think we're kind of trying to find our way through it at the moment, but we've gone down the digital route, and that has been the best for us in terms of access to content and enabling access to wider numbers of people.
Just following on from that point, it'd be great to hear perhaps afterwards from AM about sustainability and energy usage and what sort of initiatives and future planning there might be in terms of very consumptive storage of data and images. It'd be great to find out about that. But more directed towards you, I was just wondering for your metrics for success and whether or not tracking statistics, usage statistics is important to you. Is it relevant about how many students are accessing, how many downloads per year, per semester, or is that not?
Yes.
It is.
It is. I didn't mention it in this. I was trying to fit everything in the time. But yeah, we do look at statistics every year, and we look at how well particular collections are used. And it changes from year to year, actually, often in line with teaching. The ones that are the most well used are the ones that are embedded in teaching. And yeah, it will change depend on academic staff as well. When you've got someone leaving, for example, who did a particular area, all of a sudden the usage of that collection drops. But yes, we do check and track usage, and we do promote the collections heavily. So we've done a lot of things in the past promoting the collections, a lot of social media things, less so recently, but we will always try and pull them into things like Black History Month or LGBTQ History Month, and pull out sections, and AM colleagues have been very helpful in finding bits from different collections for us to use on social media, for example. So yeah, we're constantly trying to make the most of the investment that we've done, and yeah, we do track statistics every year.
Really, really interesting, and the no extra costs thing. I know it's a completely different, separate conversation, so I won't go into that. We've grappled with that at Bristol as well.
Yeah.
One thing I did think about was you presumably got a lump sum of money from the university, 1.5 million. How did you persuade the university to give you that much cash for resources like AM Search, etc.? I mean, I know you mentioned NSS results,
yes,
for example.
That wasn't to do with NSS. So the original 1.5 million was part of the research strategy. So there was an amount of money attached to developing the research strategy, and this was kind of the humanities and social sciences bit of it. So they said, this is the amount of money you've got it for 5 years. It was divided up, so we didn't get it all at once. So we got a chunk every year. And there was a lot of money that went into research infrastructure in the sciences at the same time. So this was seen as the thing to support humanities and social sciences particularly. And that was what academics were saying at the time. We want more, we need some infrastructure too, and infrastructure for us is resources. So, yeah.
So did you kind of purchase outright, or did you go for more for the subscription?
We did a variety of things. So we did, for the AM, we did it an outright. But we've got other arrangements with other publishers which are more of a kind of subscription type or spread out arrangement. We've just tried to negotiate the best deals we can to get as much content as we can for the money we have. So, yeah. All right, thank you.